Good afternoon. It's just after 1:30. It is April 13th. We're here as the Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee. We have a budget work session, 3 items on the agenda for today. We're going to go through Department of Agriculture, Department of Recreation, and then we have DHCA and the Housing Initiative Fund, the HIF. With that, why don't we start with the Office of Agriculture, and let me, before we turn it over to Mike Scheffel and the Office of Agriculture, let me see if council staff has any comments on this item.
Good morning or good afternoon. No specific comments, just to note that this county executive is recommending a $1.6 million budget, no recommended enhancements, no recommended reductions, and council staff hasn't identified any either. I would just point you to the OBIT analysis on page 2, which notes that Office of Ag is exemplary, and that despite its size and structure of its operating budget, OAG has made significant strides, suggesting that with additional targeted resources, it could expand its efforts and have a greater impact on racial disparities and other inequities that affect land access and farming in the county. All the small changes that are not to be voted on today are summarized in the table on page 3, and that's the packet.
Thank you, Mr. Ali. And speaking of exemplary offices, let me turn it over to the office. Director Scheffel.
Thank you, Chair Friedson. Thank you again, Council Members Joando and Fanny Gonzalez. It's always nice to be in front of you. We particularly appreciate the full Council's support on our capital budget. We like short, brief, to-the-point conversations. So I want to thank Bilal. I want to thank Seamus here. They do a great job with our budget. So with that, thank you.
Great. We'll take yes for an answer. Congratulations and good work, and hope you can continue the efforts on the OBET. I think it speaks to your commitment to equity, and we really appreciate all of your work on the ResJ goals that we have. And, you know, in particular, I really appreciate the work that you are doing with emerging farmers. We have 1/3 of the county is foreign born. Most people who are born in other places around the world are born in rural communities. This is the overwhelming land pattern for most people across the globe, particularly those people who move to the U.S. from other places, and providing agricultural opportunities, making sure that we have culturally competent food, making sure that we are addressing those issues is really significant, and ensuring programs that support smaller and emerging farmers help to facilitate that. And we have AfriThrive here recently, and you know, Trifina has spoken quite a bit and has a really good partnership with the office. There are many other examples like her, and so just wanted to express my personal appreciation for your work on that. And it's reflected qualitatively, not just quantitatively, but both are important. With that, I think we are agree to agree here. We like non-controversial budgets, nothing on the reconciliation list to consider, and appreciate the work of the team and your continued leadership. And with that, all those in favor of this, please raise your hand. We have unanimous as recommended by the county executive. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right. May all of our budgets be this easy. All right. We're moving in the range of controversy, I guess, or at least discussion, I should say, not controversy. But we're going to invite up our former colleague, the once and current director, the returning son, so to speak. Welcome to Director Albornoz. Welcome to the team. Appreciate your work. Why don't we start with council staff to walk us through, and then we can turn it over to Director Albornoz to walk us through anything that he wants to highlight as we then go through the packet. So with that, let me turn it over to you, Ms. Cummings.
Thank you, Chair Friedson. For the Department of Recreation's FY27 operating budget, the county executive recommends an increase of $2.9 million or 4.27% from the FY26 approved operating budget for the department, for a total of $71,442,894. The C's recommended budget includes $127,403 worth of changes that are being placed on the reconciliation list per the Council President's budget approach for this year. And this is representative of two proposed additions to the FY27 operating budget. $104,098 for a program manager, that's one FTE, and it would be for the administration of recreation contracts, and $23,305 for the addition of the FBI wrap-back system, background and fingerprinting verification. I would also note that on April 9th, Council members Ludicky and Councilmember Evans shared a memorandum requesting the initiation of a new Excel Beyond the Bell elementary program at Studwick Elementary School and the FY27 operating budget. This would be estimated to cost $429,253 for a full year of implementation, or $229,626 for half of a year. Should the committee recommend adding this to the reconciliation list, it could be added into two separate tranches, potentially. Just walking briefly through the packet, there is a summary of the FY27 budget on the top of page 2, and information on the various department programs can be found on pages 2 to 3. The OBET analysis is on page 3 of the staff report, and it was found that the Department of Recreation demonstrates a proactive and strategic commitment to advancing racial equity and social justice with a score of 11. This year, at the request of council staff conducted base budget reviews for some county government budgets. The reviews allow the council and public to see major operating expenses and contracts for the different budgets. And that is attached on circles 29 through 37 of the packet, and there is a summary on pages 3 to 4 if there are any questions on that as well. Getting to the budget for this year, on page 4, starting in section F, table 3, we have a table that summarizes the changes for the budget this year. I did just want to note that this morning the EC committee met and recommended a 7.5% CUF increase, which would decrease the CUF request and recreations budget slightly by about $5,000. We will have that updated information for you as things move along and are finalized, but just kind of wanted to flag that. Just to briefly go through some of the reconciliation list items, the first one being the program manager for the administration of recreation contracts. This request would fund a program manager position for the administration of recreation contracts, and the request was included to support the effective management of recreation contracts to ensure that public resources are utilized effectively. Duties of the role would include monitoring contractor compliance with contract terms, confirming receipt of goods and service, and monitoring contract expirations to avoid service interruptions. These were areas that were identified as areas for growth through a recent contract management audit. And I just want to note also on that item that the calculation for the program administrator, it does assume a 3-month lapse. So the $104,098 is the cost effective on October 1st, 2026. The full annualized cost of the FT would be $138,798. The second item is the FBI wrap-back system background and fingerprint verification for $23,305. This is a one-time funding request, and it's to support moving the department's background clearance process to the FBI wrap-back system. Participating in the system will allow the department to more effectively coordinate fingerprinting and track renewals of clearances more effectively, and will enable them to improve the purging of records and align the system with what MCPS is using. On pages 5 through 7, we have some of the other changes noted, if there are any questions on that. Just under fund balance policies, we highlighted the PLR planned life cycle replacement. Table 5 shows PLR usage in FY26. And in the middle of page 8, the department has shared their plans for PLR fund use in FY27 as well for review. Just also under the fund balance section is Rec Assist. We have some updated information on how the funds were allocated in FY25. The funds were allocated to 2,513 households in FY25. 82.5% of the funds utilized for programs and activities, including summer camp, and 17.5% used for pool passes. It is anticipated a similar level of funding will be utilized in FY26. So the committee decision points for today are listed on page 9 of the staff report. And that includes the program manager for administration of recreation contracts, the FBI wrap-back system background and fingerprinting verification, and of course the EBBE expansion as recommended by colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you for a comprehensive report and packet. I really appreciate it. Let's turn it over to Director Albornoz and help us understand and walk through this.
Great. Well, good afternoon, good people. It's great to see you all. I'm hoping you get a little bit of rest here and there where you can over the next couple of months. I know things have been extremely challenging and they're not going to get any easier anytime soon. But I do want to acknowledge Ms. Cummings and the packet that she put together, and Mr. Ahmed and his partnership with OMB. I think the headline for the budget we're presenting to you this afternoon is the cost of doing business budget. We are not adding any bells and whistles that are not basically a requirement in order for us to be able to sustain our operations at current levels. As you all have seen, and again, I have seen many of you at our facilities just this weekend, we are at extraordinary highs across the board in terms of participation, which is wonderful news. But in order to maintain our program offerings and our facilities, we're asking for these additions just to be able to maintain services at the current levels. The additional FTE position is one that we would prefer not to have, but as noted, this was a direct recommendation in not one but 2 audits that have recently been done of our department that sort of uncovered some risk. If we do not move forward with this, there are more than 500 contracts that are managed by 2 staff members with support from others, but primarily just 2. And as we heard recently in the ECE committee with regards to the Arts and Humanities Council, it's critical for us to have the infrastructure in place to adequately monitor these contracts so that we monitor them with fidelity. The other thing that I will note is that there are some additions, such as the annualization of the seasonal budget for the Silver Spring Recreation and Aquatic Center, that again, it's an item that would just allow us to be able to operate the facility year-round. And although technically it's new, it's not really new. It's just the annualization. And then with regards to the FBI wrap-back system, I think that one sort of speaks for itself, but we have to have the appropriate controls in place to ensure the safety and security of our most vulnerable participants, especially our children and youth. And the wrap-back system allows us in real time to identify any potential issues that may emerge. So for example, if we extend an offer to somebody to work for our department, and while they are still on probation, we may uncover that they have committed a crime. And that's something that we need to become aware of in real time and not after the fact, so that we can handle those issues expeditiously. And the last couple of things I'll mention are there have been increases in the cost of supplies and materials that we use. And it sounds nuts, but an example is our pool chemicals. And as a result of tariffs, pool chemicals are now more expensive than they were just 1 year ago. So this is once again a trickle-down effect of the federal policy decisions that are being made and impacting us at the local level. So those are the challenges that we are trying to work through. But we very much appreciate your leadership and your support of all of our programs and services. We are proud to be contributing to the health and wellness of our residents across the board and improving their quality of life. And as once again occurred during the resident survey, Parks and Recreation finished in the top among county services that our residents most appreciate. So I'm happy to answer any questions you all may have, but I know you have a lot to get through today and over the next few weeks. But thank you very much for your leadership.
Thank you for that. Really appreciate it. see if there's any comments initially from colleagues. If not, we can jump into the decision points. Let me turn it over to Councilmember Joanda.
Well, this may do both. They're kind of, one of the decision points is a question on the contracts manager. Just talk about what that would do. I agree with the problem. We've seen it in a number of, not only risk, but also just implementation of programming, being able to get people the money and the responses that they need in real time to do the things that are helping the community. So could you just talk about what this person would do and how that would lighten the load and what it would look like?
Sure. So our contracts range from pool chemicals and managing those types of contracts to ensure that they're being carried out in the manner in which they're supposed to, all the way to the Arts and Humanities Council, which is a very involved contract that involves a lot of heavy lifting and reviewing to make sure that all of the invoices being sent and submitted line up with what's in the contract. We also are required to review their grant-making process to ensure that that meets all of its requirements. And that takes literally dozens of hours of staff time in order for us to be able to manage that. Right now, I, as director, am helping to facilitate some of that as we get through this process. And whenever there's an issue, it potentially raises the possibility that a ball may be dropped. And so this will be more than just another set of capable hands that allows us to be able to look at more contracts. But I'm going to yield to my colleague and friend, Carmen Berrios, who heads up our administrative team, to talk more specifically about what this person will be doing and how they'll be working with our current contract monitors.
Good afternoon, Carmen Berrios, Department of Recreation. Yes, so as Gabe mentioned, this program manager would allow us to bring the monitoring of some of our major contracts, especially the 2 NDAs that we manage, as well as our non-competitive grants, back into the hands of experts. So right now, a lot of those contracts are being monitored by people such as Gabe and myself. And while we love spending time with Arts and Humanities and some of these other groups, we are not experts in contracts. And so having an additional person in the department to help us monitor the contracts would help alleviate some of the concerns in the audit, where we just weren't focused in contract requirements and reporting requirements, because frankly, there just wasn't the time to do it. In addition to all of the supply contracts that we have, all of our contractors, all of our instructors are also contractors. So your private swim instructors, your yoga instructor, pickleball, those are all instructors that are on contract. They're small minority-owned businesses for the most part in the county. But whether you're teaching a swim lesson or yoga, it's still a contract that's coming in. It has to be properly vetted through risk management. We have to make sure you have the proper insurance. And right now, one program manager is responsible for administering all 608 contracts that we have. And so it's just not feasible. And when you compare it to other agencies in the county, our ratio is just not in line with what is considered reasonable.
So would this be a person that divides that in half, or is it going to, basically you'd be cutting that in half and splitting it up roughly?
Yeah, maybe not directly in half rate. The NDAs and non-competitive grants are a little bit more intricated than than a swim instructor contract. But yeah, we're going to divide the work almost in half.
Well, I know there's a need.
Still a lot.
Yeah.
The hours will be split in half, but maybe not the number of contracts.
Correct.
Because not all contracts are created equally.
Exactly.
Some are pretty clear and obvious. You are a yoga instructor, you do the hours, you showed up, you get paid. Others are a lot more intricate in terms of outcomes.
I'll say also that where I'd like to get to and what we're going to work towards is not just checking to make sure, but looking at outcomes and ensuring that those are being met with fidelity as well. Because it's not enough just to make sure people are getting paid on time and that they're following those basic but important and critical administrative functions. But are we doing the right thing?
How many people are showing up to those classes? Are there differences of who's showing up? And are we actually reaching into the communities in a way that is intentional as we hoped and as we wanted and as we programmed it to be, or is it not doing that? Yeah, I think that would be helpful. If you could break down what the contracts are, not for today. We're not making a final decision today since it's a reckless item anyway. But I do think it would be helpful and illustrative for the full council at the full council discussion. They're not going to be making a final decision, and we as part of them at that point either. It will be as, part of the final budget deliberation. But if you can, by the time we take this up, for the reconciliation list, as part of the committee recommendation at full council, if not certainly, over the next few weeks before, we make a final decision on this, I just think it would be helpful for us to, eyes wide open, understand, what contracts we're talking about and how you might intend splitting it up. Madam President.
Thank you. I'm going to be straightforward. I understand the need 100%. It makes sense. And it's going to go to rec list. Just don't celebrate.
Oh, we know.
Because
Yeah.
I just don't see many of these items surviving just because of the deep hole we are in. So yes, it makes sense to have it in many ways. Do we have the money? We don't. So that's all I'm going to say. But yeah, sure, we're going to put it on the rec list.
All right. Well, I think that is an important context to provide just for the rest of the conversation today. Putting this on the rec list reflects the fact that I think all of us see the need and would like to do it. I think there's a secondary question of whether or not we have the resources at the end of the day to make it happen. That's a second part of the conversation, but it can't be in the mix unless we put it in the mix and have it be part of the conversation. So it will keep it to be in the conversation. So without objection, we'll add to the rec list. We'll ask that you provide some additional information for us for full council as well. Let's just keep this going then, if it works for colleagues, unless anybody else has any other broader conversations. FBI wrap back, I think this is pretty self-explanatory. We had a long OIG conversation about this with rec participating with the school system and talking about these issues and background checks when we're having folks with our children. We want to make sure that we're vetting them to the extent that they need to be vetted to make sure that we're keeping our children safe. In particular, rec manages a lot of programs that touch children and that impact children and that are contracting folks to supervise and to look after children. So obviously this is a very important one. So Councilmember Jordan.
Yeah, and in previous years we had, as you'll remember, Director Albanaz, a way to say like this should be a part of the base budget. We're not really operating in that guidance this year, but I feel this would be one of those items. Just want to say that, and I know everything's going on the rec list, but I think we have to, given the amount and the importance of what it's for, I think we have to do it. And so, I'm just saying that out loud. So I'm certainly going to try to push this through. I think the previous item is not in that category. It's in a category of we would like to do it, and there are efficiencies to be had from doing it. There are really strong reasons to do it, and we should do it. But if it doesn't happen this year, the risks, while there, are different from these risks. So I just want to say that, and if there's a way to represent that as we go forward. I'll say it again when we get to full council, but I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, one's an operational need, the other is a legal requirement, and I do think there's a big difference of those two things. The legal requirement in this case happens to also be about the safety of kids, which makes it even more impactful and emotional, I think, for all of us and personal for all of us. Whether you have kids or not, the fundamental responsibility of government is to keep people in general and specifically vulnerable people and children safe, and this speaks to that. So I agree. I want to be respectful of the council president's process. I do think there are opportunities, and I'll just say this out loud, and I'll say this again, down the road, where sometimes before decisions are made on the rec list, these things are delineated, and perhaps we can flag this for council staff if and when the council president decides on her process as we take it up. If this could be noted as a legal requirement, which is different from an operational enhancement. The other one, there's clearly a need, but it's not a legal requirement. This one is, so maybe we could just at least denote that, Madam President?
Agreed.
Okay, great. So rec list asterisk, but we want to be respectful and mindful of the process. And make sure that we're being consistent. So without objection, thank you for noting that, and thank you for bringing this forward. Let's continue on to the other county executive recommended budget changes. Ms. Cummings?
Absolutely. So other CE recommended budget changes include increased cost in the amount of $381,597 for seasonal temps. And this increase is to fully account for seasonal staff at the Silver Spring Recreation and Aquatic Center. The requested funding supports 6 months of staffing at the center. And this is on the budget because the opening of the Silver Spring Recreation and Aquatic Center coincided with construction work being done at KSAC.
Yeah. Annualization of the full year cost. So, yep, I think without objection, no suggestion that this go on the rec list. This is an annualization of a prior decision. So let's continue.
Okay, next we have increased cost for East County Recreation Center Food Bank contract escalation for $3,065. And this simply reflects a contract escalation with the East County Food Bank and would allow the department to continue providing space for the East County Food Hub at the East County Community Recreation Center.
Great. I think we could take up all the next ones together, the EPACT increased cost, the maintenance contract escalation increased cost, and the teacher instruction contract escalation. These are all essentially the same category of things that we have to do, things that, are the cost of doing business, as the director noted earlier, and we are, without objection, agreeing that we have to pay the bill for, the requirements that we have. So without objection, that would be 2.2 through 2.5, if that's okay with council staff. To save you some breath, since you already kind of shared this, and we already heard from the director on it. Let's just quickly talk about the indoor pools on Memorial and Labor Day. This is a suggestion. It's a lot of strain on staff. Just want to clarify, from my understanding, and for the public's understanding, we wouldn't be eliminating staff on these days. We would not be, we would be able to leverage staff to be able to properly staff the outdoor pools, because the demand on outdoor pools are so significant. The crowds are so big at outdoor pools over these holiday weekends that having to locate them at indoor pools that are almost, abandoned on those days versus the outdoor pools that are beyond capacity on those days, is that right, or is it that would allow us not to have staff hours on certain places?
I would say that's mostly correct. While there is usage of our indoor pools during Memorial and Labor Day weekend, we do direct as much staff resources, and it's not just our aquatic staff, because the lines, especially if it's a beautiful weekend, can be very long. So, but this is a slight savings. Not much, but we're trying to find it where we can.
Yeah.
And it will impact some residents, but we can direct them to our outdoor pools, and it is just 2 weekends out of the year.
And you think it'll be an operational enhancement as well, because it'll allow for better staffing of the outdoor pools?
I do. That's a good way of putting it. That's correct. We will.
Yeah, the way I view it, that's how I read it and saw it, and kind of take the recommendation of this is an operational decision and enhancement that happens to have a slight, modest financial benefit,
Correct.
But it's really not primarily a financial benefit. If we had adequate staffing and more staff than we needed at the outdoor pools and no lines and no challenges, then I would view a $32,000 savings as maybe not worth the juice not worth the squeeze. But if we can take some of our most popular facilities that are way over capacity and have much better staffing complement to make them a little bit better to use and more efficient and have a better customer experience, sacrificing a smaller number of folks to be able to access certain facilities on those particular days, to me seems like the right operational decision. And the fact that it has a small, modest financial benefit to the county seems like a benefit, but not necessarily the primary rationale, for me at least. Great. Okay. Sounds good. I just wanted to understand that. I think we're good on that. And then the Metro Access, if you have any comments on that. If not, I don't think there's any controversy here. So without objection, on 2.7, the transfer from Transportation Services Improvement Fund of $10,000. Okay, great. Appreciate the list on PLAR. I did just want to note on PLAR, this committee has really leaned into PLAR quite a bit. We think it's really important that we take care of the assets that we have. This is a really important dynamic. We heard quite a bit of public testimony on this. I just want to say that this committee has been steadfast champions of that issue for the rec department, which hadn't even caught up to its pre-recession levels, which is unique to any other department across county government, and I didn't think was acceptable, and I know colleagues shared that view. And so ultimately, we've been pushing and advocating for that, and I appreciate the list. We previously haven't had a list to start. We've asked for the list. We've gotten the list. Getting the list in the beginning of the budget is a good practice, and I think is really helpful for residents to understand the impact of where these dollars are going. So I just wanted to appreciate that. So I don't think there's a discussion point here or decision point, but I just wanted to raise that. Okay, one question. Let me go back to Councilmember Jawando, and then we can turn to the EBB conversation.
I meant to bring this up a little earlier, but I think now's fine. So on the base budget expenditures, so back on page 3 of the packet, one of the things I wanted to ask about was travel expenditures. So it was $297,000 last year, and almost a 50% increase proposed for this year. What is that for? What's that? Is that going to conferences, learning about innovative things? What is that travel being used for? And in a tight budget year, it stuck out to me as something that might be a potential base budget reduction.
We'll have to get back to you on the specifics. I know that some of this is our aquatics programs have the opportunity to travel.
Yeah.
And so that is back since COVID. And so I'll more specifically respond
When we get
to that
full
question.
council, I'm
Yeah.
not going to suggest anything now, but it's just something that I wanted to flag. And if you could break
Fair.
down what changed specifically from this year to last year to, obviously I know gas costs more, but what are we traveling to? And if you could identify any potential savings there, but would want to understand what the impacts would be of that.
You got it.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great. Okay, thanks. Excel beyond the bell.
Absolutely. So on April 9th, Councilmember Ludicky and Councilmember Evans shared a memorandum requesting the initiation of a new Excel Beyond the Bell elementary program at Sedgwick Elementary School. In the FY27 operating budget, this would be an estimated cost of $429,253 for a full year of implementation, or $229,626 for half of a year. And this could, as I mentioned earlier, be split into 2 tranches for the reconciliation list per the committee's purview. Right now, there are 18 Excel Beyond the Bell elementary locations. Approximately 1.8% of the Department of Recreation's operating budget goes towards supporting EBBE programs. And just to note, last year in FY26, $688,246 was added to the budget to expand this program to Waters Landing and East Silver Spring elementary schools, as well as an FTE was added, a program manager for $98,398. When asked where Sedgwick falls on the list for future program expansion priorities, department staff noted that Sedgwick ranks mid-high on the Strategic Program Index in terms of priority and qualitative scores. And just one additional note, a recreation specialist and seasonal staff complement are required to run an Excel Beyond the Bell program, with the model being 1 recreation specialist per 2 schools.
Great. Let's hear from the director first, and then we can hear from colleagues on this.
Sure. Excel Beyond the Bell obviously is one of our signature programs. It's one of the programs we're most proud of. We have worked hard on making sure that the program is implemented with fidelity. It's also tracked very closely for its outcomes. We recently re-entered into an MOU with Montgomery County Public Schools where we are able to track the truancy rates of participants of the program. We're able to track grades of the participants of the program. And some of the direct benefits are straightforward. We're providing wonderful meeting opportunities for kids to be able to engage in positive activities with caring adults where they're continuing their learning from the day after school. But the other secondary but equally as important benefit is this provides some additional hours of work for teachers who can get more time with the students that they work with during the day. We also provide robust trainings in positive youth development that are actually bus drivers end up participating in some of the various trainings that we have, just as one example. So, and the other very cool component of Excel Beyond the Bell programs is we're very intentional through partnerships with organizations such as Action in Montgomery to organize the parents. And so it's been a success across the board. And the other thing long-term that we want to achieve through the EBB model is to begin programming at the earliest ages possible and then tracking these kids as they go through middle and high school. So we establish relationships with them early on and then support them all the way through until young adulthood. And so that's why investments at the elementary school level make so much sense. We very much appreciate all three of you who've been extremely supportive of this model for many years now. And I'll just thank publicly Council's members Evans and Lukey who've been doing their homework on EBB programs, and we think Sedgwick would make a great addition.
Great. Well, first of all, let me just thank you. My role on the Collaboration Council for Children, Youth, and Families, which we served on together, we were back-to-back chairs of that organization. I joined that board specifically because of a connection through EBB, which was the birth child, really, of the Collaboration Council, arguably the most signature program between Department of Recreation and the Collaboration Council for Children, Youth, and Families is this signature program, and the outcomes-based focus is really the model from which the entire out-of-school time infrastructure exists. Like this is the entire program that we're looking to implement everywhere that we possibly can. So I'm a huge believer in EBB. This is obviously a very needed school site, 92% farms rate, which obviously is a need. That's where we want to ensure that these programs are available. According to the memo, the only option for families being more than $700 a month for out of school time for families is unaffordable to even families of means, much less families who are eligible for free and reduced meals, which is nearly every single family at this school. So hugely believe that if we are going to move forward and expand, which we have historically championed significantly, that this would be the obvious area to look at. It is a significant amount of money and a tough budget, so I just think we have to weigh that. But just want to express my support for this program and my appreciation for the proposal. Happy to open it up to colleagues for discussion, then we can make a decision on this item. Madam President.
Obviously, I'm a strong believer of EBB, and I do agree that Sedgwick is a great candidate because of the profile of the school, of the people who go there. Yes, I'm support of placing in the rec list. So.
Great. Councilmember Dronda.
I'm also in support, obviously, huge caveat that we're going to have to make difficult decisions, but one of the reasons I brought up the travel is if I can get some money from some other places, then this would be a super, super, super high priority. As you know, Councilmember Alvarez, you were on the E&C committee with me the last several years, and even before that, as chair of HHS. If we have 18 EBB sites, I think, right now, my former school, Oakview's on there. If we had one priority, that I want a program like this at every school, and that needs it. And we've been working really hard. I remember when we first got on the council, it was how do we expand to South? How do we expand? There was always a big effort. So I hope that we can do it. I will just ask, as far as the priority list, we're going to have a joint committee later on out of school time in the budget process. But just, and I'll bring this up again then, but I just want to preview just how we're looking at expansion over time, you know, and obviously we've had meetings about this with the Collaboration Council and others about what we're, you know, because it's not EBB at every place. That's a model that is it's kind of like full scale. It's like the, you know, the platinum edition, but there's other things that we can do to make sure there's access at every other school, and we still are not quite there at that comprehensive look at it. So if you have any you know, high level comments to share now, but that's just something I know I care about, I know you care about, and that we need to get to.
Thank you for that question. Clearly, sustainability is a huge issue because, you know, although this budget year is tough, the next 2 or 3 aren't going to be any easier. And when I first started as the director of the Recreation Department in 2007, we had a middle school after school program in every single middle school in the county. But due to reductions, we had to reduce down to 1/3. And that was when EBB was born, because we thought, well, if we can't serve everybody as we would like, let's at least concentrate our efforts in doing it as best we can. And let's then scale it as things improve. So we're working on scaling it. But even under those circumstances, we wouldn't be able to achieve that with fidelity. So I think there's 2 key partners here. One is MCPS itself, and empowering them, supporting them to provide more support in the out-of-school time. And second, I will say, is our philanthropic community, who I think has been interested in investing more in this space. And if we can create more public-private partnerships, I think we can better leverage our resources and get to more kids.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, that was the original idea and plan. That's actually how I got into it. It was through a philanthropic partner that helped to spearhead the beginning of EBB through the Collaboration Council that helped with some of the seed funding originally. I think we've gotten out of that model, but that was originally the vision of this. But this was supposed to be a public-private partnership to serve the needs of those who need it the most, where otherwise wouldn't have access to these types of out-of-school time and after-school activities, and do it in a way that leveraged philanthropic support, public-private partnership, and community buy-in to ensuring access to every student, whether it's ones that are provided through these types of interventions or ones where their family can afford the $700 after-school program, which is very unaffordable to most. Unfortunately, I think we've gotten out of that. I think we have to get back into that focus and that level of partnership, because I don't think we're going to be able to scale to the extent that we would like with government alone. The back to normal pre-recession, pre-COVID, there is no back to normal. So I do think we have to rethink that. My only question on this would be, because this is so difficult, because of the comments that I heard the council president making earlier, which I really appreciated, is there another option here? Not to say that we shouldn't put the whole thing on the rec list, but is there a tranche option where if you can fully scale this program at the full cost, let's do it? But if we can't, is there a smaller version? Is it fewer students, or is that not scalable? Is it, a smaller version of this? Is there another option here so it's not all or nothing? Because I am a little concerned if we set this up as all or nothing on the rec list with a fairly sizable price tag, that it's going to be pretty difficult in the end. And I will say, I think the memo from colleagues was so compelling that I'm just very concerned that if nothing happens, then that would be a missed opportunity if we can't get everything.
So in the past, especially during those difficult times, we handled that a couple of different ways, and maybe we can do that here. One, it does take a while for us to ramp up an EBB program. We have to get to know the students, we have to get to know the families, we have to promote and market the program. So it's not like September 1st arrives and we just press a button, the program starts. We do need a longer lead time to be able to implement the program. So typically, most EBB programs start after January anyways, in terms of, now then that becomes an FY28 problem because then you annualize it. But at least with regards within FY27, that would actually better reflect the implementation of the program and give us a longer runway to be able to start it. That's one. A second is we've started even later, and where we've had models where we've done some workshops or done some weekend programming, where we brought kids in more of a one-day kind of a model, to be able to carry out some programs and services and get them to know us and we get to know them, and then with a plan later on to implement the program fully. So we do have lesser versions of some of the out-of-school time programs where we're not having as many program offerings, and we can get back to you with more specifics on that. But I think given the needs at Sedgwick, I think we'd want to implement a program with Fidelity, but maybe phase it in. I think that would feel a little bit better but once, if we're going to talk about implementation, but those are a couple of different ways we can reduce the amount, but still head in the direction of establishing a program there.
Great. My suggestion, if it's okay with colleagues, would be for us to agree to put this on the rec list, but ask that you provide options, which could potentially involve tranching when the full council takes up the committee recommendation. And, hopefully, even the colleagues, we can, come up with something that we think makes sense and maybe even suggest it to colleagues based on your recommendation, but just frankly, to give a better chance for something to actually get through in the end, given the need and given the challenges that we face. I just think it would be helpful for us to put ourselves in the best position possible. If we can get it all, great, but if we can't, have another option there as well. Does that work for colleagues? Great. Okay. All right. Without objection, we'll add to the rec list. Rec will come back to us, to full council, with some different phasing and tranching opportunities. We'll work with Ms. Cummings to present that ideally in the packet beforehand, or at least in a memo or something to colleagues beforehand, so they have something in writing to look at. And I think that's great. All right. Anything else for us to cover here? I think we're all set. Thank you to the department for your work. Thank you to colleagues. Without objection, we accept the rest of the county executive's recommendations. Thank you. All right. Great. All right, we're going to move on to our next item, which is Department of Housing and Community Affairs and the Housing Initiative Fund. All righty, we're going to have DHCA come up to the table. And we have council staff who's on the other side. I'm adjusting. No, it's fine, Mr. Mia. I'm just trying to, adjust to my new bearings. Normally you're by the computer so that you can work the slide deck, but we don't have a slide deck that we're going through. We just have one that was presented for the record, which we appreciate. Colleagues were briefed previously, and so have gone through that, and the public now has it. It's a comprehensive presentation, which we appreciate. Reflects a lot of work, a lot of hard efforts that are being undertaken by the team on a wide breadth of issues that you oversee. With that, why don't we just navigate our way through the packet, if that works for you, unless there's any initial comments from Director Rudin. Let's dig in, because we got quite a bit to get through on these items.
So I'll just do a little high-level overview of each of the operating budget components as well as the CIP. So today we have the FY27 recommended operating budget for DHCA. This includes their general fund, their grant fund, and their housing initiative fund. We also have 3 CIP items in the packet, but there's actually a 4th item which I'll verbally address later on, relatively minor, which I previously emailed the committee members for the AHOF CIP. But we do have several CIP items. These are March amendments that came over on March 15th that require committee vote as well. On the operating side, the executive is recommending an overall funding level of $77.7 million for DHCA, again, across all 3 funds, operating funds. This is actually a decrease of $5.9 million over the FY26 approved operating budget. That decrease is being driven by decreases in the HIF, which, again, the HIF is now supporting a higher debt service for FY27 as a result of a higher amount of taxable bonds that are being issued this year in FY26. So the HIF has less resources on the operating side to account for that additional debt service. On the general fund side, there is an increase of about $1.3 million overall. This includes 2 new positions that are being requested, both relating to implementing council bills. There's also about a little over $300,000 in what was previously funded in the grant fund, shifting over to the general fund as well. And then there's a small, minor 2.5% increase for general fund funded contracts administered by DHCA, about $14,000. On the grant fund portion, no significant programmatic changes. It's really just same service levels with minor cost increases. And again, that includes a shift of FTEs from grant to general fund as well. And then on Housing Initiative Fund, as I mentioned, debt service has increased somewhat by about $6.4 million to account for additional taxable bonds being issued this year that the executive and the council approved last year. Other than that, there's no significant programmatic changes on the HIF. And so that we will discuss recordation taxes and rental assistance programs in more detail on April 29th through a joint HHS PHP session. So the HIF operating budget discussion today will have an overall number for rental assistance programs, but we'll talk more in detail as to where that money is going to what programs on April 29th. And then in terms of the 4 CIP amendments, one is the countywide facade easement. Executive is recommending $600,000 in state aid in FY27. No significant issues there. On the White Oak commercial area improvements and revitalization CIP, the executive is recommending $75,000 in state aid in FY27 to align with the actual award that's been received or announced. And then on the Affordable Housing Acquisition Preservation Program CIP, the executive is recommending about $78 million in FY27 to 30 period and $162 million overall compared to the previously approved CIP. And again, he's recommending some additional almost $64 million in taxable bonds in FY27, as well as additional current revenue and recognition taxes in the out years of that 6-year CIP program. Finally, the AHOF CIP, which I did not mention in the packet, has a minor funding shift of $5 million from FY28 to FY29. Again, no issues, just realigning the repayment schedule. And then the Troubled and Distressed Common Ownership Community CIP was reviewed last month at PHP Committee. The vote was deferred because it's current revenue funded, so we decided to bring it back after the operating budget is released, so we have a full picture on current revenue. No changes from that previous review, and it is, of course, current revenue funded, and again, no issues on that one. It is no change from last time. But of course, all these CIP projects, especially those GO bond funded or current revenue funded, are subject to CIP reconciliation as we get toward final budget approval in May. So I'll stop there and dive down in details.
Great. All right, let's dig in item by item. So why don't we raise the issues and have the director speak to them?
Okay. Fine. First, we'll discuss the general fund. As I mentioned, there's 2 new positions. One is a request for 1 FTE and $125,180 for a position to implement eviction notification bill 31-25. This position is, I believe, planned to be covered by a contractor in the interim unless this position is approved in next year's budget. So there's some movement on implementing the requirements in this bill through a contractor resource. But the department is requesting a new position, a full-time position, next year's budget.
Great. Any comments on it?
As outlined in the PowerPoint presentation which we gave you all for reference, this position is a result of a fiscal impact statement for this emergency bill, which deals with eviction notification and coordination between DHCA, the Services to End and Prevent Homelessness, and the Sheriff's Office to try to as best as possible, reduce evictions as much as possible. A little known statistic is that Montgomery County is respected across Maryland for having the lowest eviction rate of any county across Maryland. And part of it has to do with the many different eviction mitigation programs, as well as the emergency rental assistance programs that the county executive's office over multiple office holders, as well as the council, have collaborated on. And this is just another part of that puzzle in trying to make sure that we help mitigate evictions as much as possible. We have statistics in there about how much work this will involve. There are over 4,600 eviction notices per year. That's about 380 some per month that have to be received, verified, checked for accuracy, and then the information needs to be entered into a database that needs to be shared with Services to End and Prevent Homelessness and the Sheriff's Office. This is nothing to sneeze about. And so it's a significantly new work for the department that hasn't been engaged in before. And so hence the need for a new staff member.
Great. Okay, that one and then the additional one, I think we just take these up together unless there are specific questions on them. We're adding them to reconciliation lists. They're kind of similar in nature in the sense that they are bill related. The 121,320 for the position for the implementation of Bill 225. The pilot amendments.
Oh, yes. And Ms. Salem was just reminding me that I should highlight that this position is projected to effectively pay for itself with citations for noncompliance with providing that the required information to DHCA. Granted, those are just projections, but it will, if not wholly pay for itself, at least significantly pay for itself. So not as big a hit to the operating budget.
Sounds good. Yeah, no, I know. Okay. Any questions, comments on these? Without objection, I think we'll add these two to the reconciliation list as per the council president's process. Let's continue on the compensation adjustments. Pretty self-explanatory there. I'm not sure we need to go into much discussion about that. Why don't we continue on then?
Yep. We do have the two grant-funded positions that are moving from grant to general fund. It's about 1.7 FTEs, totaling 277,497. In years past, this has been a recurring issue, not just in DHCA, but also other departments. As our compensation increases for our positions, they run into a cap on how much could be, how much a federal grant could cover for compensation or personnel costs. So when we exceed that cap, those positions, those additional costs must be borne by the general fund. And so again, this year we have about 277,000 and 1.7 FTEs that are being impacted and proposed for shift to the general fund. We also have about $25,000 that was for an ongoing service for fair housing testing to essentially ensure landlords, property managers are in compliance with federal fair housing laws. That service, the cost of that service is also being proposed for shift from grant fund to general fund in FY27. So those two items staff would recommend be placed on the rec list, even though they are in some cases must-haves, as these are not new services, but just cost shifts of existing services.
Can we just speak to that quickly so I make sure that we all understand this? So essentially, we have federally funded, grant-funded positions. We have county employees who are, paid in the same rate as part of the same collectively bargained agreements. It's an accounting question of where the funding is said to come from. So they get a raise. That raise is the same as everybody else. The federal grant doesn't provide the same level of raise, so there's a gap. The general fund has to eat the cost of that gap. Is that essentially right?
Correct. And part of it has to do with the federal government doing continuing resolutions over and over again and not funding increases to deal with the increases in providing the services that these federal.
So they're level
run.
funding these grants, and we're not level funding our personnel. Our costs aren't level costs, and so therefore there's a gap. Are these, I just want to understand, is this going to be a continued problem. Obviously, we don't know if there's going to be continuing resolutions as the standard practice of the federal government, and a challenge of relying too much on a federal government that is unreliable as the most charitable way to describe. Are these because we already have the grants and have already applied for the grants, and so therefore we can't ask for the correct amount of money, and then if we have a new grant, this will be resolved? Or is this gap of this is the amount that they pay for this service, this is the amount they pay for personnel, and our costs for personnel and for services are higher than the federal amount, and so no matter what, we're always going to have to eat out of the general fund a portion of a federal grant funded position? Because I just think that's an important distinction. If this is a temporary situation that is going to right size itself eventually, and we have to eat money out of the general fund in order to make it happen, or if this is an ongoing problem that grant funded positions across county government are not funded fully, and therefore we lose money on every grant funded position and will in perpetuity. I think we have to have a strategy on that where we have something budgeted in the county budget, not just for DHCA, but for all grant funded positions, that we understand, here's where that 30% is coming from, and we budget for it every year, or else we're going to have an exploding problem here that's not sustainable.
Hi, this is Paul from Salem, DSCA Finance Division Chief. And so this is basically reflected on the federal grant, CDBG, and the home grant, because DHCA is the recipient of the federal grant. And since it's a formula-driven federal grant when it comes to us, over the past many years have been remain constant, no increase. However, the cap at 20% funded the CDBG can only be charged to personnel costs. And for home, only 10%, that whatever the grant amount that we receive can only be used for personnel cost payment. So when county increased the wage adjustment, however, the federal funding remained constant. So from that perspective, we kind of entitled that we need to make sure that county resources, it kind of backfill whatever the formula-driven grant, unless we receive all the local jurisdiction receive additional. But this is a formula-driven, so likely it's calculated based on the population. So we don't anticipate any significant increase. So it's going to be an ongoing issue for us to deal with.
Have we looked at the total cost of this across all of county government? That's more of an OMB question. This seems like a big problem to me. We have a lot of grant funded positions across county government. It's not a DHCA issue. It seems like we should have a strategy here.
I understand that finance and the county executive's office and also OMB has looked broadly at this question, but I'm not in the position to tell you what the final decision or recommendation is at this time. I can look into it and come back with an answer for you.
Okay, well, could I formally request that? I'm standing next to the council president. If it's okay, I'm happy for it to come from her, from the committee, or because I don't think it's just a committee question, actually, and it's not really just a personal request here of something that I'm interested in. I think this has a broad application. I mean, it's not going to impact my decision on this particular thing or this committee's ultimate recommendation, but I think we have to have an understanding of how the executive, OMB, and finance are treating this issue, because I think it is a challenge as we take up the budget. Yeah, please, Madam President.
I thank you so much, the chair, for asking this question. I would just add that we will need that analysis ASAP. And I'm saying by Friday, to give you a deadline, even Thursday, of how this is impacting not just this department, but every other department. I'm thinking HHS especially.
I will definitely bring that up to management, and then we'll have an answer for you in good time.
Thank you for that. We'll ask council staff maybe make sure that the leadership has that as well. Councilmember Drawando.
Yeah, I appreciate the line of questioning and the issue. We had ENC this morning, and we raised, for example, that the school system's losing $9 million in federal funding. And I said, well, where's that coming from? It's mostly coming from Title I funding to low-income schools, teacher training funding. And so they had, that's grant funding. Those are federal money. And so, for example, they shifted some of the Title II funding and Title I funding to the base budget in their request. And we talked about that. I think we would want to know similarly if and when there has been grant funding that has been drawn back, or if we expect it to be drawn back, what would you, we can't supplant everything, I would imagine, but what would you switch over, what have you switched over? And I think we'd want to know that by agency, yours included. So just adding, I totally agree with the request. So if that's clear, hopefully, I think that would come back in what you're talking about providing.
Yes, it's absolutely clear.
Okay.
We'll bring this up to management.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just to let you all know, for this coming fiscal year, we have remained relatively flat. We got a little bit more home, a little bit less CDBG, and so they're not cutting back. They're not pulling back. Or I guess one of the things that the federal administration is trying to do is to devolve. To cut some programs, but also to devolve responsibility for programs to state and local governments. But we haven't seen that yet with CDBG and home.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. Appreciate you following up on that. Let's continue.
Okay. As I mentioned, there's a 2.5% inflation adjustment that will be centrally or separately decided by the full council for all county departments. For DHCA General Fund, it's $14,156. So that'll be determined at a later date. I did want to talk about the General Fund portion of DHCA's operating budget, which also collects revenues. The revenue is projected to decrease by $1.3 million FY27, or a little over 10% versus FY26 approved level. There's no fee rate changes in any of the fees. What's happening is on the landlord-tenant fee side, which includes a rental licensing fee, and this is a fee that rental units pay every year to register with the county. That number is decreasing by $872,000, or 7.9%. This is due to technical errors, I believe, that led to an overstating of the number of units that could be registered. And then the other major fee decrease is on the short-term rental registration fee side. That's a $500,000 decrease, or 71%. There was a significant reduction in the number of short-term rental units that were estimated last year in the budget. As DHCA stood up its program, they discovered that the number of units are far less than the 1,400 that was originally estimated when HHS had the program up until last summer when it was shifted to DHCA. The actual number of rental registration units, I believe, is around closer to 400. Or go ahead. Yeah, please go ahead.
So we can deal with those each in turn. When the County Executive Council decided to switch responsibility for short-term rentals from Health and Human Services over to DHCA, Health and Human Services and their contractor, Granicus, which runs a service that effectively scrapes the internet for data on which short-term rentals are being listed, because there is an existing old long-term agreement between the county and the short-term rental major providers, think Verbo, Airbnb, that allows them not to share specific data. And so this contractor was hired by HHS to try to get at the actual numbers in individual short-term rentals that were being put up in the marketplace. Also, the Office of the Inspector General, as you all know, did a report on how short-term rental enforcement was being run, and had several criticisms prior to the switch. HHS, through their contractor Granicus, as well as the Office of the Inspector General, with separately gathered data, all said that the total universe of short-term rentals per year was over 1,400. When we took over, we started working much more directly with Granicus, getting them to revise their systems. And what we found out was that they were not cleaning their data. And so they had basically double the number because they hadn't cleaned their data. And so thankfully, some of the staff that you all provided us as part of the fiscal impact for taking over, we were able to clean the data and determine that the actual universe is about 700 per year. It's extremely complicated to enforce the law because units go on, units go off. There are many owners who, license responsibly. There are also other owners of these short-term rentals who wish to avoid licensing, and because it's sort of on or and then off of these platforms, it's a little, like, whack-a-mole trying to, find them all. And so that has all led us to the significant reduction in the estimate of the total universe possible. We have significantly increased the number of licensees. We're getting on the positive side of 360 some, and we project that we'll have over 400 in the coming year. And our goal is obviously to get up to the licensing rates, in the 90s that we have for regular rentals. But a lot of it is dealing with the complexity, trying to get the contractor to revise the coding for the service they provide to go beyond what they normally, provide to governments across the country, and to do our own data cleaning and our own, investigative follow-up. So that's the issue with the difference in the estimations for short-term rental revenue. I'll hand over to Ms. Salem to talk about the technical error that was made.
Can we just stop there? Let's.
Oh, sure,
I think because they are slightly. I mean, they're similar, but they're slightly different. So I think let's
absolutely
dig into this for a minute, and then let's go to the next one if we can.
Sure.
So I just want to make sure I understand. So you had a amount of money that you thought would be generated from licensing fees because we were doing nothing when it was in DHHS effectively. We realized that we had provided enforcement to a department, but no enforcement was actually happening. Now we're moving forward with enforcement, moved it over to your department. You were told, based on the contractor and the prior department, they said, we haven't done anything on this, but here's the universe of folks that you could be collecting from. You assumed that you were going to collect from those people, and it turns out that number was way off. And it's probably half, it sounds like, of what the number you thought, and you're collecting from like 2/3 of the folks that are actually there, half to 2/3 of the folks that are actually there, which means that we have a massive 72% reduction in what the revenues that you thought you were going to collect, which is basically 2/3 of a half, essentially.
Yes.
Is that right? I mean,
Yes.
just to make sure I'm understanding.
To the contractor and HHS's credit, OIG, when they did their own separate investigation, they came up with a similar overestimate based on their conversations and data gathering from.
Well, they probably took the number from the same place that
no,
you did.
actually, they reached out directly to the marketplaces, Vrbo, Airbnb, to try to separately verify the data they were getting from HHS, and their count was actually higher than the HHS amount. And so it gets to the difficulty when there's not a requirement for these marketplaces to turn over their actual data about how hard it is.
Does that mean that
to
there's more that are
determine-
unregulated?
Say again?
Does that mean that there are more that are unregulated that you're aware of, or does that mean that there actually are fewer?
We think there are actually fewer.
Okay.
Now, that is just the folks who go through the major marketplaces. There are folks who could be
You
doing.
do short-term rentals, but that's
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
pretty high fruit. I mean, I
Yeah.
will say, like, the goal here was to get the low-hanging fruit of the people
Yes.
who are on in order to sell their properties, they have to advertise them pretty openly to the public. And if they can advertise to a customer, they're basically advertising to you, the regulator, saying, here we are, we are providing housing on a short-term basis, functioning like a hotel, essentially. And so, I do think at the very least, our argument from the beginning has been, at least we should be able to get those folks in compliance with what we think is reasonable life and safety standards. Okay, so a couple things. One, you based the amount of personnel on the number you thought. The number is a lot less than that. So the first question is, whether or not you still think the number is appropriate for that, number one. And number two, I'll just speak to very personal, close to me, Jillian and Lindsay, who are two young women who are residents of Montgomery County, who are vacationing with their family, their brother and their parents in New York. Unfortunately, safety standards were not followed. Things that clearly could have been done to prevent a tragedy didn't happen, and there was a fire that took the lives of two vibrant, young, beautiful souls that will never be returned and can never be undone. And that is the life and death situation that we talk about when we talk about life and safety. Here, their mother, who is an extraordinary person I happen to know very well, she has been on a pursuit to ensure that her family's tragedy is not experienced by other families, and that she does everything that she can to ensure that the fate of her daughters is not the fate of other people's daughters. And at the state level, we passed the first in the nation law to regulate with fire safety standards these short-term rentals at a state level that Delegate Foley and Senator Feldman have been champions on, that I had worked with them a little bit on. And so that would be the second part of this, of what aspect of that legislation will be handled at the state level, what aspect of it will be required as a regulatory requirement on the county level, and whether or not the assumptions that you made in terms of the addressable regulated market, so to speak, what level of staffing complement would be needed from your perspective on this?
Sure. So in hindsight, based on what we've learned, we underestimated the number of licensing and regulation staff because the amount of work that is required to clean the data on a weekly basis that comes from the Granicus contractor to track folks down. A lot of it is explanations of things. So we actually advise folks that there are ways that if they rent their unit a bit longer, they don't have to license if they're willing to do that. It's, like kind of this weird gray area between short-term rentals and, like your normal annual, annual lease. And so we try to provide them technical assistance to either lease if they're, fit within the short-term rental definition, or if they don't want to do that and are amenable to leasing their units a little bit longer, they don't necessarily need. So there's a lot of technical assistance that goes on with all of this. On the code side, because when it was transferred to us, it was made explicitly clear to us that we weren't supposed to proactively go out and inspect every unit as part of the licensing process, just do it on a complaint-based system. And so based on the complaints that have come in, we overestimated. There were 2 code enforcement staff. We overestimated. But as, thank you, Councilmember Friedson, mentioning this, first in the nation law for the protection, especially for fire safety of short-term rentals, that will be the responsibility of the county to conduct those inspections. And so thankfully, we have the staff already, we have 2 folks already on staff who can handle going out to the 700-ish short-term rentals over the course of each year. And actually, those inspections will help us with the licensing to convince those folks who haven't licensed yet to go. So it'll actually help with enforcement. And so I think all that to say, I think we will end up needing the code inspectors we have based on the new state law, and that I think we are, given us a tough budget year and everything, we didn't ask for anybody additional for licensing because we are improving how we do this, but it's still weekly data cleaning and follow up, because people, go on and go off of these lists. They may be on for a month or 2 each year. And so it makes it harder to kind of catch folks and get them licensed, get them licensed up, or, send them a citation if they refuse.
Okay. Any other questions on this. I appreciate that. I think we should come back to this issue because I do think it's an evolving situation. Obviously, you've realized the numbers were way, way off, that you now have additional responsibilities that you didn't realize. So I do think, perhaps coming back in the fall would be appropriate. It'll give you a chance to catch your breath and understand the full magnitude of the state policy changes and how to implement that. I'd also be interested to understand between DHCA and, since it's fire safety related measures, if this is really within the core competency or if this is a fire marshal, Department of Permitting Services function, or how that will work, and make sure we have the right people in the right positions to do the right things, and that we don't run into another situation where we're, there's a little bit of a disconnect here between what we are expecting and what we're asking. So I think coming back on that and, thinking through what that looks like, and if, Mr. Mia, you can work with Director Bruton and the team just to figure out, what that looks like, and come back to me beforehand so we can plan that out, just to make sure that it's a constructive and productive conversation, that we are really understanding not just the cost, but the real implementation of how this is working, what we're getting out of it, not just on the revenue side, but on the safety side, because I'm particularly interested in that. And I do appreciate you and your department has had conversations with the family, the Wieners, and just want to thank you for that, and others that have advocated for this. Talk about what we do in Montgomery County, which is more than others are doing at this point, but not as much as we were doing now that the state has stepped in to provide some additional support here, which I think is important and helpful, and I believe will save lives. So appreciate that. Let's move on to the other item, the landlord-tenant fees.
Ms. Salem can explain the technical error that led to the overestimation of the multifamily fees.
It was just when we last year discussed the different scenario to increase the multifamily units price, and then we worked together. We did not catch the error. It was the amount of the short-term rental was double counted in the overall revenue projection. And so that final number was placed on the rec list with additional revenue. But for FY26, we have currently collect more than $500,000 in the multifamily licensing fee compared to a year before. So even though with that error in the revenue projection for FY26, the department continue to collect the multifamily units, and we have seen the number actually come out a little bit higher, at the same period night. Look at just the number before. So we are working towards the goal, but it's just because the last year when we estimate the revenue working with the council staff, and then we did not catch that error.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I understand. So it was about 1.3 million in additional revenue that you were projecting, and you ended up with about 500,000 instead, additional revenue from the new positions that were supposed to generate all the additional revenue?
So the revenue was overstated. It was about 1.3 million because it double counted the short-term rental number included in the overall multifamily revenue projection when we increased the $6 or $8 additional, I forgot the number. But right now, if I look at the number of the multifamily units that have collected in FY26, the amount that we received today compared to a year before, we have seen additional $500,000 being collected.
All right, so even though you double counted, if you take out the double counting, then your math was better than you expected. Is that essentially what you're saying?
Yeah, we did a better job at collecting multifamily fees, which
you're good at collecting. You're bad at math, I guess. Or counting is the standard.
We had too many scenarios to work through.
I think it's like hard for people to hear that we're so great that we missed by $500,000 here and 800,000 there, and people are we're patting ourselves on the back to say how smart and how great we are. I mean, I think I'm not trying to be disrespectful here, but I also think we have to be honest. We screwed up, and I think we have to own the screw up. My only concern here, one is you got to fix the math. Obviously, I think you've fixed it. I'm glad we identified it. That's the most important thing. The second thing is we've been adding positions, a lot of positions in DHCA. I mean, we have massively increased this department in a way that almost no other department has been increased by headcount. And one of the things that has been argued for the increase in positions has been the revenue that was going to be generated by a lot of these positions. And it is a little concerning to me that we have over-expected in a number of instances, honest mistakes, be it as they may, but that is a challenge and a concerning dynamic that I don't think we can afford to continue to do. So I guess the question is, how do we avoid that? Because one of the premises of the expansion of the positions has been the revenue generation. The revenue generation has come dramatically short of expectations. Now we've got the positions, so we're continuing with the positions, but I am afraid we're asking for new positions, and this seems like it's going to be a continued process. I'm sure there's always going to be need for new positions, and there are always going to be things that we think could generate more revenue. But I'm just a little concerned about moving forward on that. So how do we be more conservative on the revenue that we're expecting so that even when there is an error, maybe sometimes the error will be, well, guess what? We generated so many more resources here than we expected. We're in a better position, not in a much, much worse position here.
Sure. So I'll answer part of the question, and then I'll turn the explanation of estimates over to Ms. Salem and Ms. Nairete to explain how the department and OMB collaborate on doing those estimates. The largest increases since FY18 have been in three groups. One was the increase of 11 code enforcement staff folks when the troubled property law was passed. And that was intended to, enforce the law, which has been, I think, it has evolved into being quite successful. But the intent was improve the health and safety of rental housing in Montgomery County. That was before my time, so I don't know what the fiscal.
There's also a massive number of vacancies that process, or just for your situational awareness, that was a division that wasn't even taken as seriously as we had hoped. And actually, Councilmember Jawando and the previous council were, pounding the table initially. It wasn't about new positions. It was about just filling the positions that were there, because there were a tremendous number of vacancies and almost no inspections were happening in a proactive way. And we were concerned about that. And then we got to the point that you were talking about. I just think it's important.
Oh, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for the corrective. I will say that within a year of starting here at DHCA, we had filled all vacant funded positions, and they have remained filled. And we also eliminated, we gave up I think it was 2 vacant unfunded positions that we had. So we're not leaving resources behind and not fully staffing. To go on to the other major increases, one was 9 staff members for the creation of rent stabilization. That was legislation that was done, some agreed with, some didn't agree with, to help deal with relative affordability and predictability to try to prevent tenant displacement, as well as we all know that there was the connection with the troubled properties law, which has turned out, whether you like rent stabilization or not, the connection about not being able to raise rents on troubled and at-risk properties has been pretty successful at getting landlords to make corrections pretty quickly. The other significant group of staff were the 5 that were part of the fiscal impact for the short-term rental law. And the others have been, one-off incremental things to try to increase our capacity, either because of fiscal impacts, like the 2 that we're asking for this year. And there were a couple that were, I guess those wouldn't show up in the budget, where we converted one position to a different, and then we had one position that was donated to us by the Office of Human Resources. And so while that was an increase in our staffing, it was not a budget request because the funding came over with it.
Thanks. Okay.
I just want to add a little bit, because if we look at the actual revenue collected under the licensing fee versus the actual spending, paying for personnel costs and revenue, actually, we have a surplus of a couple $100,000. And I share that data with Council Step Mr. Mia, so you can take a look at that. The way that department is make sure we're monitoring the revenue and the expenditure on a quarterly basis, which is we work closely with OMB, just same as the other department. So we understand the revenue is sort of projected at the estimate, but on the other hand, we will make sure, on the expenditure side, in addition to the personnel costs, as you know, sometimes turnover saving, sometimes the, people come on board and all that kind of stuff. We will make sure the revenue and the expenditure, the gap is not as whatever based on the number approved by the budget. So this is kind of the diligent process that department work closely with OMB and the finance to make sure in the current fiscal year that we are able to maintain some level of the, consistency.
Appreciate that. And I appreciate you sharing with me. I did look at the breadth of increase of positions. The last 10 years, 88 positions in DHCA to now 133 positions. I mean, it is a dramatic increase. Some of it is based on what you had shared specifically. Some of it is just broadly just dramatically increasing the department. I just think it's important if we're going to say we're increasing positions and it's going to generate revenue that we get it as right as we can and that we're just really careful with that to maintain trust of the public. But I appreciate that. Okay, let's continue.
Okay, that does conclude the general fund portion of the operating budget. On the grant fund portion, 2.2% increase is being recommended, about $193,000 over the FY26 level. There's no programmatic or enhancements on the grant fund side. As I noted, there's 277,000 and 1.7 FTEs being shifted, plus the 25,000 for fair housing testing. There's a minor cost increase for the Tacoma Park Code Enforcement Contract, 17,449, and there's about projected to be up 649,500 new federal state grant awards, which will be expended through grant awards to various recipients. I believe we did receive earlier than previous years the actual award for next year, which is not reflected in the packet, but we will update for full council. It's the actual award I think was about 16,000 more than what the CE had recommended, so not a huge increase, but we did get it early this year in terms of the actual award. So we'll have that updated for full council straw vote. On the Housing Initiative Fund side, as I noted, there's a total decrease of $7.5 million over the 26 approved operating budget. That decrease is primarily due to $6.4 million increase in debt service to account for the additional taxable bonds that are in the CIP being planned for issue this year in FY26. As last year, the CE had recommended a sharp increase in taxable bonds. The recordation tax amount has gone up by almost $3 million, or 11.7%. We'll discuss more on the 29th, but all of that is allocated towards rental assistance programs in HHS, HOC, and DHCA. The county code requires those dollars, that revenue source, to be spent on rental assistance. Beyond that, there's no significant, there's no programmatic or enhancements. There are minor cost increases for contracts for inflation, the 2.5% inflationary increase. These are going to the Neighborhoods to Call Home program, the HARP program, as well as for home buyer counseling services that were funded in FY26. There's a contract escalator amount for those, totaling $66,000 for all of those programs. Compensation adjustments total a little less than $80,000 for HIF-funded positions. Going back to the debt service, so debt service to account for the additional bonds in the CIP is essentially impacting operating expenditures. In this case, for 27, because of the $6.4 million increase in debt service, the amount program for affordable housing loans in the HIF has gone down from by 10.7 million to 1.6. So these loans are essentially cash going towards affordable housing development, same as the bonds that are in the CIP. So same purpose. It's just a matter of the CE is deciding to use the cash to leverage debt and pay the debt service for that purpose. On the revenue side, the general fund transfer to the HIF, which is based on 2.5% of property taxes that were collected in the previous 2 fiscal years, is increased by 2.8% or $1 million. That is by a county resolution. It is not a mandatory target, but it is a target that the CE follows in terms of deciding how much general fund transfers to go to the HIF. There's a one-time revenue increase of $895,000 from the sale of property on the east side of Crabs Branch for development. 25% of land sale proceeds go to the HIF, so that is the $895,000. There's a reduction in MPD alternative payment income of $610,000, and there is a reduction in investment income of $2.4 million, which is determined by Department of Finance. So that's the HIF side of things. Any questions there? Let's stop there.
No questions? No, I think we're good.
Okay. And then on the CIP side, as I mentioned, countywide facade easement has $600,000 stated in FY27. White Oak Commercial Area Improvements has $75,000 stated in FY27. No issues from staff's perspective on those two. On the Affordable Housing Acquisition Preservation Program, the CE is again recommending additional taxable HIF bonds in FY27, as well as increased dollars in FY28 through 32. Altogether, when we look at the previously approved CIP, he's recommending an additional, bear with me here. He's recommending an additional $78.2 million from the previously approved just in the FY27 to 30 period. When we take in FY31 and 32, the total increase is $162 million. And that again is a combination of additional bonds in FY27 plus current revenue and recordation tax premium in the years after FY27. And the additional debt impact from programming those bonds in FY27 will hit the HIF in 28. So stop there. Any questions?
Yeah, can we talk a little bit about, we've heard a lot about the concern about the significant decrease in the amount of capital support taxable debt for HIF funding, just in general, the amount of HIF funding. There's a lot of cash that was provided for HIF funding in the last couple of years. That cash has not been used for this purpose. I will note that there has been one-time funds. They've been used for ongoing expenses elsewhere, and that's left a hole here. And the county executive has made up for some of that hole with additional taxable debt. Basically 64 million of that. It was 22 million approved in taxable debt. The recommendation was 86 million in the CIP that came over to us in March, and now it's dropped again to 64 million, which is a significant drop from last year, right?
So just to clarify, it's what came over in March is 64 million more than what was in January. So he's increasing it by $64 million in FY27 alone.
Above, but
Above,
20 million approximately below where we would have ended up on cash and taxable debt from last year, right? No?
No, it's an overall increase.
It's an overall
Can you
increase.
get your mic towards
An overall
Yes,
increase
yes.
of cash plus taxable debt?
So in that particular project, there was 22 million that was programmed for 27, and then there was an influx of loan repayments that came into the project, just over $10 million, and the CE added the 64 million in taxable debt for that project in March.
Okay, I mean,
So
I
the
understand
cash
what you're
hasn't
saying
gone
is
down.
technically true, but the total amount provided for affordable housing projects, cash and taxable debt, last year to this year, what's the delta?
Oh, that's a different question.
And that was the question. It's the
are
same
you-
question because it's a question that I just asked. It's a different one that you just answered, but it's the same question I just asked.
Are you talking overall or just in the AHAP project?
Well, you can share both, but I was asking generally.
In general, I can get back to you. We do have a spreadsheet that shows the crosswalk from what was approved last year to what's been recommended this year through March. I could share that with staff.
That would be great.
Yes.
That would be great.
But there was a, for this particular project, there was an increase from January through March.
Okay. Everything that I have looked at and everything that we have heard, which is consistent with what I have looked at, is that there is a drop in the amount of support. Now, before there was a lot of cash-funded support for affordable housing programs, and there isn't cash support for those affordable housing programs. The county executive has made up for a chunk of that gap, and I appreciate that, in taxable debt, an increase in taxable debt that he is recommending, but not to make it whole to at least the level that we were at last year. I mean, Director Bruton, we even talked about this, it doesn't meet not only the pipeline that you have, but not even the maintenance of effort of what we have done in previous years, in the last, couple years, in order to, provide the loans that we had for the projects that we need. So that's my concern that I have here, that in every other circumstance, we're holding the, we're not focused on where the dollars are coming from. We're offsetting general fund to cover, the differences, and we're doing all kinds of things to say whatever was funded last year is what should be the baseline to start for this year, except in affordable housing, where we're saying, well, there's not cash available this year, and so we're not going to make up the full amount. We're only going to make up part of the amount, which I have concerns about. And I do think as we, if you clarify for me and tell me that I'm wrong and that the testimony that we heard from a lot of people during our public sessions is wrong, and that, in fact, in the aggregate, both taxable debt and cash amounts for affordable housing loans are at least the same as they were last year, I would have a different view of this. But in the meantime, since I don't think we're going to have another bite at this apple, I would propose that we put on the rec list additional taxable debt, the same approach that the county executive took, but get us to the full amount, which I think is $20 million. And I would recommend, if colleagues were okay with it, at least for consideration, to keep it as part of the discussion, that we do it in 4 tranches of $5 million. A tranche of $5 million is approximately, and staff can confirm this, but $550,000 in cash debt service impact on the HIF. So the $550,000 per tranche would have to be on the rec list, and we'd have to make tough decisions on that. I think that is very much in play. I think splitting it up and not having the full $20 million is the best way to do it, because I think it's hard to have the full amount there, and that is similar to the rec list item that we put on before. It's a large one, I will note, but I think it's significant, and the goal would be to get us to even for last year's total commitment. Being agnostic to how the money is being funded, our job is to figure out how to fund it, but we want to get to at least even. And again, if I'm wrong, if OMB has has different data that is different from what we have seen and what we have heard, then I would have a different view of this on the reconciliation list, and I don't think it would have the same level of interest, although obviously we'd always love to fund more affordable housing. But I think at least from my perspective, if our goal is to at least say we're getting to parity with last year's level of effort on our priorities, affordable housing is a huge priority, and I don't feel like we're at level of effort personally, from what I've seen.
Just to clarify,
Please.
So overall, yes, the dollars for affordable housing is lower this year than it was last year overall. For this particular project that we're talking about, the AHOP, the project has always been at $22 million each year. That's the programming. And starting in FY25, I believe, there was an influx of cash because the county had additional monies from the state, and that money went into the project, $65 million. And then the following year, the county executive added the $75 million in taxable bonds for this project. So he's done an increase in this project overall over the years from the initial $22 million that's normally programmed in this project.
Yes, and in every other circumstance, this is exactly the point that I was trying to make, and I appreciate the clarification. We have used last year's standard level of effort on our priority areas as the basis for what we were intending to do. And in this case, we're setting a different standard. And my point is, I'm not saying it shouldn't go on the rec list. It should go on the rec list. It's a new cost. But I think we should at least consider being level of effort on affordable housing and see how that fits into the broader priorities. We may not be able to fund it in the end. It may be too challenging for us to do, but ultimately I think we shouldn't decide to at least put it in the mix and put it under consideration along with the other priorities that folks are talking about. I support the Excel Beyond the Bell that we did earlier and think it would be great if we were able to do it, but that is a program enhancement. What we're talking about here is the level of effort on affordable housing year over year, as you just confirmed
Right,
for us.
so for 26, for this year, if you look at the amended project, there is $10.1 million extra in 26 that came from loan repayments for this particular project. If you add that to the 64 million, that gets you to the increase that happened last year, which was 75 million in this project. So
But 75 million was the increase, or 75 million is the net? Because
75 million was the increase last year.
above 22.
Right. And then this year we had 10 million that we programmed in 26, and then additional 64 million in 27. So that's 74 million, which is on parity with last year.
So in the March amendment for the PDF, you will see the 10.1 million increase under the column of the FY26. So if you look at only the FY27 amount, you're kind of missing that 10.1, and I think that's what Ms.
So
Anita was trying
you're
to
saying the
explain.
10 million is forward funding really for FY27 that was being loan repayment for 27? I'm just trying to understand
Well,
the point that you're
no.
making.
What we normally would do is we would wait to get loan repayments from developers and then program it in the project in the budget year.
Right.
This year we programmed it in FY26 because DHCA had, I believe, some projects that they wanted to fund in 26. And so the agreement was to put that 10 million in 26 to fund those projects. And then we had the increase in 27 of the 64 million. If we had followed precedent from previous years, we would have programmed the 10 million in FY27, as we've done in previous
So you're
years.
saying that covers half of the 20 million gap?
I'm saying that it
Or
gets
all of
us
that?
to the 75 million that you're talking about. The increase last year is the same increase as this year. It's just in 2 different fiscal years.
Yeah, the issue that I have is you're double subtracting the 22 million. We were double counting before, and at least by my math, the 76 million is the total amount, which includes the 22 million. Or you're saying it's on top of that?
It's on top of, because the program in 27 is 86 million for 27, and then there's a 10 million for the same project in 26.
So it's 74 million
So it's 86
plus 22 million plus
Yes.
10 million?
No, it's 74 plus 26 plus 22.
So it's 64 plus 10 plus 22? That's what you're saying?
Yes. That's what it is.
Okay, is that the same math? I just want to make sure we're all on the
Yeah.
same page here. We want to avoid the issue. I appreciate the clarification. We've got the green shades here at the table, which is helpful.
The confusion is the
we appreciate
10.1
it.
million in 26. It looks like it's showing up in 26, but it won't be spent till 27. Is that correct?
Part of it may be spent in 26. We have affordable housing preservation and production projects that close throughout all 12 months of each fiscal year. And in order for, let's see, we know we have 30 projects. This is going to be our biggest year, the county's biggest year ever. If you count just county dollars on those 30 projects, we will have closed loans in the realm of $186 million. $10 million more if you count federal funds. And that will produce or preserve over 2,400 units. So biggest year ever. Part of the reason that we asked OMB to, and I don't know the technical terms as well as Ms. Arietta, to program the $10 million we've already received into FY26, because otherwise one of the projects that is predicted to close really close to the end of in June, really close to the end of the fiscal year, we would not have had enough. We would have been short like $2 to $3 million to close that, and so that's why we requested OMB to program it back into 26 so we can make sure to close that project.
So that's why you got the extra 10.1 million.
Right, and
Basically forward funded what would have normally just been sent over here in FY27, and you would have said, this is loan repayments, we've already received them, but you're not going to program them until July 1st. Okay, I got that. Here's what I'm trying to understand, the math, that math is not mathing for me, and maybe it's just that I'm not good at this. FY26, unless I'm mistaken, it was 102 million here, approved,
Last May.
102 million. Correct?
Yep.
Okay, so that's 22 million plus 80 million. Is that correct? Okay. All right. So catch me up to the math to get to 80 million. The 10 million gets us 10 million. I'm just trying to understand. My goal here is to make it whole, to say at least, we should put on the reconciliation list to get back to the level of effort from last year. And if we can figure out a way to do it, I believe we should. If we can't, we can't. But if you're saying, Andrew, your math's wrong, it's not actually the 20 million that we had been thinking about, then I'm open to changing that number. But I'm having a little trouble understanding why the math is wrong. So help me understand this.
We can talk with county council staff. I do believe that the 102 million that's listed here is not just for this particular project.
So the council staff number is wrong.
I think, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think what you mean is that the 102 million listed by OMB also includes the 2.2 million for the Common Ownership Community Revolving Loan Fund, COC Loan Fund. And so the total number really for production and preservation is 99.8 million.
Yeah, I think we can provide clarification. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Let's do that.
it should be listed in the way that actually reflects how the request is coming over. So I do think we should work on that. I appreciate the clarification. So that, let's round it up to 100 million, just for right now, for all intents and purposes. So that would mean instead of 102 million, it's 100 million. Is there any other funding that's embedded in here, or you think the 100 million is the right number?
I believe we can go with your 100 million.
100 million is right. Okay. And you'll confirm that. I'm not holding you to that, and I'm not going to give you a hard time about that. I appreciate it. Okay, so let's assume it's 100 million. 22 million has been the annual baseline, and then we have increased that significantly in recent years. If last year we had 100 million, this year we're at 86 million. And you're saying plus 10 million?
Yes.
So it's really 96 million?
Yes,
So in order to get whole, it would be 4 million?
that's right.
Okay. Well, I would say, I want to confirm that, and I think my intent would be for us to at least be whole. But at the very least, we need to, I believe, put the 4 million in additional taxable debt, which is the same approach that the county executive took, on the rec list, just to increase that number slightly to at least get us to whole. And I would like confirmation, because I will personally change the number, not the interest of making it whole, at full council if it turns out that number isn't accurate.
Yeah. So just to clarify.
And then I want to hear from colleagues. I'm just giving my own personal perspective here.
The 4 million taxable bonds, it's not cash. It wouldn't go on a rec list that would compete with the general fund. You can do it a straightforward CIP amendment if the committee would decide today, and would just add $4 million to FY27 to get to that 100 million number. So it would not go on the rec list. It would not be a general fund issue. The debt service would hit the general fund in FY28, so it would be next year's budget issue. But for purpose of today, if you wish to add 4 million taxable debt to the CIP project in FY27, it's a straightforward amendment that the committee can recommend to the full council.
I would personally recommend we do that, and then if there's additional information that doesn't get us to our full number, I might make an additional
Right,
motion at
correct.
full council, but, to do the 4 million, I would be, comfortable doing it here. Let me turn to Council President and to Councilmember Joanna.
I'm just going to say I agree with the chair and in agreement. That's all.
Councilmember Joanna.
Appreciate the conversation. Obviously want to see the exact numbers as well. And we talked about this a little bit when we met about where the 99.8 was coming from vis-a-vis what the advocates were talking about and how that jives. So I think this was good to get to a place, if we can confirm those numbers, what the differences were. This is more to council staff, I think. So to increase the taxable debt and to put more into the CIP, I'm going to put on my Chair of Education and Culture hat here, that we have a massive hole in the CIP, which is worse than the budget hole, the operating budget hole. So just to be clear, I'm all for additional affordable housing. I proposed an amendment to increase the spending affordability guidelines, which we would have to do to address any of this hole as we head to the end of this budget process. That amendment failed. I just want to make sure we're clear. It's great to say we want to add it, but we're going to have, there's no way to even meet it because we have even at the CE's of spending affordability, there's still a $400 million gap with the CIP. So I just want to make sure, could you just speak to that?
That's a great point. There is a distinction between what our GO bond limit is under SAG, which are tax exempt or tax favored bonds, and a difference between those and the taxable bonds we're talking about today in the HIF, which are supported by the debt service from the HIF operating budget. So as opposed to the full faith and credit of the county for GO bonds. So these taxable debts, taxable bond, HIF bonds for affordable housing are not counted towards the GO bond limit under SAG. They do have a debt service cost, just like our GO bonds, but this debt service is paid from the HIF through all of its various revenue sources.
And that would come out, as you said, in 28. And do we have a sense of what that number would be?
Would
be just under $400,000.
$400,000.
If we're talking about adding 4 million,
It would be like
just under 400,000.
So it's about 100,000 per million ish.
Just
slightly
over.
We're looking at 5%.
5%.
Yeah.
So just for additional information, like this year, 27, the debt services number is about 23 million. And without any additional number put in the rec list, right now for FY28, we would have to pay 28 million.
And this recommendation would take it to 28 million
Plus.
400.
0.4, right?
0.4, yes,
yeah.
right. So we're already paying that, yeah. But that would be in the following year. So obviously it's an operating budget consideration
For FY28.
for 28. Got it. I'm fine with it.
Okay. Let's move forward with that. It would be helpful for us all to get on the same page to avoid the, different calculations happening here and charts not showing different things and thinking they show something. And I just think all of us getting on the same page would be helpful. At the very least, we have that recommendation as part of the HIF, which won't go on the reconciliation list. I do think if we go beyond this, my recommendation to colleagues just, is that we should
Target what we funded.
yeah,
FY26.
if there is a larger number, if we're missing something, if this 4 million does not cover to make us whole. And my only question to colleagues, and I'm just being nitpicky here, is do you want to make it 4.2 million or just keep it at a clean 4 million? 4.2 would be the whole number. 4 million is an even number. I think 4 million is fine. Okay, 4 million just to make it even works for me. I'm not going to nitpick on that. But please do, if council staff, DHCA, and Ms. Salem and OMB can get together and finance and get together and just make sure we're all on the same page, that we are whole on level of effort from last year to level of effort from this year, because I do think it's important that we at the very least maintain our level of commitment on this, even in a tough budget year, and be consistent on affordable housing as we have been on every other item in the budget in the way that we're treating it.
Okay. We can do
All
that.
right. Thank you for the discussion and the back and forth. Appreciate it. And thank you to colleagues for support on this. Okay, we have a recommendation, 3-0 in favor of that recommendation from council colleagues, and you're going to get back to us with information if appropriate. I do think it would be helpful for full council to update the chart or make sure it's presented in a way that's a little bit clearer, just so that it reacts to and reflects the conversation that we just had, to avoid
We'll put it in more
similar
detail. Yep.
confusion, because I think there was a little bit of a disconnect there between the two numbers, as we all noted. I think that save all of us a little bit of heartburn, and make us sound like we're better at math. And with that, I'll turn it back to you if there's
No,
any
just
other items you
we need
wanna cover.
we need a recommendation for the revitalization for troubled COC CIP. As I noted, no changes from what was reviewed last month. Staff has no issues. We can approve it as it is, recommended by the executive, knowing that its current revenue subject to reconciliation as we go forward in May. And then just a staff recommendation for the AHOF CIP. Again, that's a minor $5 million shift from FY28 to FY29 of loan repayment proceeds. Again, staff recommends approval of that one as submitted by the executive as well. So that's it.
Great. Okay. Without objection on all of those, I just had one other. You talked about the troubled properties earlier. We've gotten some questions about the regs on that, which apparently is sitting on a desk. I'm told that people mean that literally in the executive branch, that there's actual paper documents sitting on somebody's desks, not electronic. So literally sitting on someone's desk. Could you give us an update on where things are with troubled property regs?
Sure. DHCA transmitted the packet to CEX on January 23rd, 2026. And OMB needs to supplement with the fiscal impact statement, and they were busy with the budget. But they transmitted it over, I think it was last week, and so CEX now has the full packet, including the fiscal impact statement. And so I know they are eager to get it over to you all as well. So it's just a matter of it getting the proper signature over at CEX and being transmitted.
Do we have a timeline yet of when to expect that?
I can pester or politely ask that it be get the sign-offs and get over to you all this week if possible.
Okay, I'm going to recommend that we do the soft approach first, and you ask, and if we haven't received something by the end of the week, that on Monday we draft a letter asking. I'm happy to do it as chair. I'm happy to do it as a committee, whichever colleagues are most comfortable with. I'm agnostic, but I do think we got to get this done. It seems like the work at the staff level has been completed, and we just need leadership to sign off on it, send it to the council, get it out there and get it done. And so hopefully we can do that, but we'll give you a few days head start here. Hopefully we get it before we send our letter and we can avoid having to do that. But if not, would ask council staff to draft that if we haven't seen something by close of business on Friday, if that works for everybody. Great. Thank you. All right. We have approved the department budget as recommended besides the amendments. So all those in favor as amended indicate by raising your hand. That is agreed to and approved. Appreciate all of the work and the back and forth. And with that, we are adjourned.